I'm gonna make a Kirblog and I'll have myself a time. Friendly comments everywhere. Humble folks without temptation. Gonna talk about South Park cause it really helps me unwind. Ample top 10s day or night. People shouting, it's not my favorite. If I didn't pick your South Park episode, then please don't whine. So listen to my Kirblog and be a friend of mine. And that's when everybody hit the X button and were like, fuck that. I'm gonna go watch anything else but this. This video, which is my top 10 South Park episodes, as I just decided to, in the last week, do this. I haven't done a top 10 in a very, very long time. This is kind of an interesting sort of throwback to some of the very first Kirblogs that I ever did, almost 2 years ago now. And in another week or so, it'll be over 2 years since I started doing these. And in that early time, I did a top 10 list of my favorite N64 games. That was split into two videos, this will probably also be split up into two parts as well for 10 through 6 and 5 through 10 for my top 10 South Park episodes. And also in reference to I've done a couple South Park Kirblogs before, one about the season 17 finale, I believe, and then also the South Park Stick of Truth video game being censored. I did that with Gaijin Goomba a while back. But with the current season kind of airing, and I've been loving the absolute shit out of it, I thought, yeah, you know what, this would be fun. I recently watched Doug Walker, Nostalgia Critics, top 10 South Park episodes as well, and got a little bit of inspiration. I felt, you know what, this would be fun. For those of you who have seen Doug's top 10 list, there will probably be a few repeats, but I think I certainly have enough of my own list that it warranted getting its own video. It's not a, full-on, I just agree with everything he said, but it was definitely the blueprint laid down, so thank you to Doug for that. But either way, I guess to start off with, since actually, kind of funnily enough, the top 10 and top 9 episodes kind of tie in with my sort of early days of the franchise, I guess I'll just sort of give a brief little bit of history. So I first saw a clip of the beginning of the first episode at a friend's house in what I guess would have been maybe 1997. I was still in the midst of the Pokemon obsession. I think it had just hit by that point. And I think right around that time, if I'm remembering my dates correctly. But I was at a friend's house. Nick, who was, if those of you who remember my Donkey Kong Country episode, Kirblog, he was my best friend before I met Mike Lucas, and we got married and had 10 beautiful children. But Nick had a clip of it, or he found it somewhere on the internet or something, on the primitive ass late 90s internet on his computer, and we watched the scene of Kyle kicking the baby, etc. And then after that, it just kind of already began sweeping the nation, and it was a very strange time for me because everybody I knew in school, or at least from what everybody was saying, everybody was watching it and seeing all the episodes and everything. And this was mid to late elementary school. This was around the same age as the boys, when this was going on for me. And it was so weird because it seemed like almost everybody else I knew was allowed to actually watch the show. And I had to be much sneakier about it. And by sneakier about it, I mean my dad and I watched it and my mom was not happy about it. But my dad was really enjoying it. And so we would... I don't think it was that we were actually keeping up with the episodes as they were airing from week to week, from what I can remember. I think actually what it was is that my dad and I would more often be renting the videos. That's right, the VHS tapes. I know every fucking time VHS is mentioned. Remember that? Yes, I know you all know what fucking tapes are. Anyway, point is, we used to rent them a lot, and they would have, this was back when you'd have 3 episodes of tape. And, so we watched a bunch of season 1 over and over that way. And, I'd watched so many of those so many times with my dad specifically. But that leads into my number 10, my bottom 10, because it's not a particularly amazing episode, but I absolutely have a huge nostalgic soft spot for it because of watching it with my dad so much. And I can still go back and watch and still enjoy it for what it is, of course, is Mr. Hanky the Christmas Poo. The very first, technically the first Christmas episode, but obviously, there was the short that led to the show being made in the first place, you know what I mean? But either way, first big Christmas episode, and I have such fond memories of, as I'm sure many, many people do, of Kyle's mom is a big fat bitch, etc. At the time, I think for a lot of kids, just watching the show in general was kind of like a treat because there were so few like adult cartoons like that existed at the time in the U.S. that it was still just like this kind of magical experience of like, whoa, I'm peering into the adults' world, sort of. Even though I don't know, I think Trey and Matt were still in like their 20s at the time that they made that, and the whole first season. I'm sure like. I think that in the commentaries they've talked about how they don't really look back on the first season, the first couple seasons with a whole lot of like, oh yeah, we're really proud of that because they were, there was a lot of like, whoa, I can't believe they're making these jokes about gay people and feces and, whatever, and Satan, etc. This kind of shit. Like just very like topics put in an immature manner that was coming off like it was mature. Kind of thing. But either way, Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh also, I think, of those first set of episodes, I think actually had like not a poignant message like the later episodes became known for, but definitely had a good message of just kind of like growing to understand each other like through different types of religions, which obviously other episodes have done infinitely better. But I don't know, I feel like almost maybe in a way, maybe this Christmas episode for that first season was almost kind of like the thing that led them to what eventually the show became a lot more about, which was getting kind of an interesting and deeper point across, through ridiculous, immature-esque comedy. But more so than anything, I just love this episode because my dad and I used to watch this all the time. We watched it every Christmas, watched it multiple times every Christmas just because we loved it so goddamn much. And a little funny story, one Christmas, I was given a box that was filled with lots of little boxes, and it was a fun little adventure. And my dad was like, all right, well, go through the boxes and check out your presents. And in the little boxes, I got a lot of these little collectible Pokemon figures that I used to get. And in one of the boxes was a Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh figure, so that was tossed in there because my dad had a soft spot for that just as well. Shit jokes. Anyway, all right, number 9, Jubilee. I would actually say that I technically like Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh more than this episode. But what I love about this one, this specifically of the Meteor, or I guess the Comet trilogy, I should say, of episodes while, the parents are out and everything, and they all want to go watch the comet and everything go by. This one in particular was funny just because this was my favorite of the three of them. The Zordon Moses was fucking ridiculous. Kenny and Kyle, having a little bonding experience and everything. Just a lot of those jokes. More so why I put this one on here is actually because of the time that it was associated with, which was being really, really fucking excited about the movie coming out. Funnily enough, and also the South Park movie is not something on this list. It's something that I love so much, like as a separate entity from the show. But I didn't actually get to see the movie until way, way later, like many, many, many years after it had actually come out, which I forget. I think it was like 99 or 2000. I can't remember what year it was. But either way, I didn't see it until many, many years later. And but Jubilee and the other two episodes, two guys in a sauna or whatever it was, and then the one with Cartman doing the Wild Wild West thing and all that shit. This one was just my favorite, just because I distinctly remembered like a lot of the jokes associated with like all the the Jew camp and again Zordon Moses and all that shit was just very amusing to me. And I remember a while ago, I think a few years ago by this point, I was going back and rewatching a lot of the older episodes, specifically from like the first couple seasons, and I was like, oh, this is one that really just made me smile for some reason. I don't know. Maybe this one's a little hard to describe. It mostly has to do with just the time of excitement around like when the movie was happening and just how this was still like on that cusp of like, oh my god, this is crazy because this adult cartoon that my dad's letting me sneakily watch and everything, But anyway, moving on. All right, number 8, Good Times with Weapons. This is skipping way, way ahead. So I actually had not been keeping super up to date with South Park like over the years. I remember there was a time, I think it was around the time when Kenny was killed off permanently for like a few seasons and they replaced him with Butters. Around that time, I was beginning to like care a little bit less, weirdly, because Kenny is my favorite character in the show. But by this point, this would have been season 8 was when Good Times with Weapons aired. Was when he was back in the show permanently. I still wasn't really keeping up with it. I didn't dislike it or anything. I just wasn't really going out of my way that much to try and find it because I was too busy probably being obsessed with anime. And how fitting that this is one that would be up here. I remember watching this at a friend's house. There was one day where this was the era when Dragon Ball GT was coming out on DVD. I think it was before it was on Cartoon Network for a while. But I was collecting the episodes of GT on DVD as they were coming out, and I brought over the Super 17 arc that I had the 2 discs for or whatever, and I was watching with a bunch of my friends at the time. And at this friend's house, he had this episode taped, Good Times with Weapons, and I'd been hearing all about it from everybody in the school. You're like, oh my God, dude, South Park did like an anime episode. It's so freaking funny and so ridiculous. And oh my God, I was like, oh shit. So I believe I was either, oh man, what would this have been? I guess this would have been like middle of high school, I think, maybe. Yeah, it would have been, maybe like second or third year of high school. I can't quite remember, but either way, it was around that era. So, but yeah, it had been a few years, and as you noticed, like I jumped from a season 3 episode to a season 8 episode. So I had been out of the loop for a long time, and I didn't see a lot of the in between episodes from a lot of the pre double digit seasons, the single digit seasons. I didn't see a lot of the more well known ones until way later. Good Times with Weapons. Anyway, getting back on fucking track. Good Times with Weapons is just an all around really funny episode. Like not just because of like the anime stuff and everything, but just it's a solid, funny story. Like, and it's another one of those. And I'm going to talk about some other ones like this too, but it's funny in that it's one of those just like the kids get into like a non-threatening, not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things adventure that just is made out to be like it's the end of the fucking world, and it's made all out to be all epic. And again, not just because of the anime stuff, but just like all the things as they transpire with like, oh, they're gonna get in trouble and they gotta hide butters and all this shit. The anime stuff is also what made it really stand out because it was fucking hilarious, and you could tell that there was a lot of like love put into like the designs and the animation for how they were going. I could tell, and I think it's the first part of the episode where the theme song, the famous theme song plays, is and you see them like fighting each other. There's just literally like Street Fighter poses, like Street Fighter animations lifted directly of them doing shit. And I loved that. So pretty basic. That's one that I again have fond memories of watching that with a bunch of friends. Somebody had taped it at the time. And just style-wise, I think it's really, really funny. So, and of course, a lot of people have done some great fan art of like anime-style South Park stuff, including that Soul Eater opening, which I'm sure a lot of people have probably seen around on YouTube and shit. But either way, yeah, anime and South Park strangely mixed together. I do wonder about how Japan feels about South Park, like in general. I'm kind of curious about that. But either way, okay. So number 7, the Coon trilogy. This is where I'm ripping off Doug's top 10 list a little bit. The Coon trilogy is fantastic. I have watched all 3 of those episodes at least 3 times. Like I'll watch all of them in a row. This was another case where I missed this. This was season 14, I believe. And this season is probably my overall favorite because it has the most amount of episodes that are my favorites, just overall. But either way, the Coon trilogy was. I had missed the initial Coon episode as well when he first showed up and they had Mysterion and everything. I've seen all of the superhero episodes by this point, and they are amongst, not my top 10, but definitely like favorite episodes of mine. I love the lore and the story that they came up with. I'm very excited about the Fractured But Whole game with focusing on those. I don't know if they're necessarily going to delve deeper into some of the things about that sort of lore, and like if they're going to solve some of the mysteries of certain characters and things, mainly with Mysterion. I'm not holding my breath on that because I'm assuming like they're going to treat the game as its own kind of separate thing. But that aside, this was actually a very solid, funny, interesting, kind of cool and epic story with the 3 of them, and the superhero versions of the characters just again kind of like the anime motif of the previous episode that I talked about. Just made it really, really stand out, and I love those kind of alternate versions of everybody, and just, if anything, it's funny too, because it really does have a lot of qualities to like, what you'd expect from like, Marvel characters, like disagreeing with each other, Civil War type of things, and evil forces appearing and interfering, etc. It is like a real comic book plot that just happened to be acted out with South Park characters, and I absolutely fucking love it for that.
What made me happy as well was the fact that when I went and listened to a lot of the micro commentaries that Trey and Matt will do on a lot of the DVD releases and everything, is they talked about how they knew a lot more than they were letting on about the overall story of this trilogy, and how they're like excited for, hey, maybe sometime will come in the future where we can revisit this and do something. And of course we had like, the poor kid and some other little minor episodes where there'd be references to it. And upon reflection, hey, maybe the Fractured But Whole will dive deeper into this. Maybe it'll be like a good opportunity for them to, do some extra things with that kind of story that they can, mess around with. I don't know. Or maybe even, I don't know, I'd have to double check the dates and everything, but maybe even the last couple episodes that we have in this season will lead into something to do with the superhero story as well. You never know. There is a war coming, and we just want to make sure that we're on the right side of it is all. So anyway, last one for this video will be my number 6, Cartoon Wars Part 1 and Part 2. I did see these episodes, if I'm remembering correctly. I believe that I saw these 2 episodes as they were airing. I think I just happened to catch them at the time, like just through circumstance. Because again, I wasn't following it. I would see one once in a while. But I really like these. Just as a quick little side note, from a kind of dorky reason now, in retrospect, as I found out, Mona Marshall getting to do an impression of Bart Simpson is incredibly amusing to me for personal reasons. But either way. And obviously Mona's a friend by this point, and that was really amusing, and et cetera. But anyway, the point being, what I love about this episode is, I'll say this: I don't dislike Family Guy. I'm not against the existence of that show. I'm not a massive Seth MacFarlane hater like a lot of animation folks are. I can veg out and enjoy a Family Guy episode or American Dad or whatever once in a while. I've actually, in recent times, I've also become friends with a person who works on Family Guy. And no, I'm not just saying that just because he is a friend. Even before that, I'm like, I can watch the show and enjoy it for what it is. And interestingly, I don't even fully 100% agree with the point made in this episode about how, we tell a real story and Family Guy never does that. I can recall episodes and specials and things in Family Guy where they tell, an actual story from beginning to end. In fact, I'll even admit, I went out of my way to see the trilogy of episodes, I think it was a trilogy of episodes, where Brian died, and then they eventually brought him back. And I was emotionally invested enough to enjoy it, and I've enjoyed all the Star Wars episodes and all that, So it's a different vibe of a show, and I think that it completely deserves its place in animation history and just in the mainstream media. It's perfectly fine. I don't love it. I don't think it's a masterpiece, but I don't have hatred for it like a lot of other artists do in the animation world. But either way, the point is, this episode was very poignant in like kind of just how the world of, animated sitcoms and adult animated shows like Simpsons, King of the Hill, South Park, Family Guy, etc. And even now, like, Bob's Burgers, Futurama, stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's very funny and kind of like how it made its mark, and like how South Park is kind of its own beast in the midst of that, because it is unlike anything else. There's nothing else quite like South Park that exists. And seeing it kind of like go toe to toe with those other properties, and particularly challenging Family Guy and kind of how that works and everything, it was just really interesting. And it made for also, again, just a very funny, ridiculous, like we're making this a big deal even though it's completely meaningless story of, Cartman is trying to get back on Kyle and prove him wrong and blah 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 and all this whole shit. It's incredibly fucking amusing. Also, my friend Dan Peck is not, in fact, a manatee. He is a real human being who writes for South Park, and he actually just got to rate some of his own episodes recently, which was very cool. But anyway, that's it. Those are my 10 through 6, and I'm going to leave an annotation on the screen here for you to go check out the second part of this video, which will be my top 5 through 1. I'm going to have it as a separate thing just because it's easier for me to export this on myself. I've been having Zero Incorporated do a lot of the video exporting recently because it's easier for her to do it that way. And in this case, I just decided, I want to give her a break and I can just do this myself. So I'm splitting up into 2 videos. Hope that's okay. Go check out 5 through 1. Maybe you might be surprised at what some of my favorites are, because I've got some interesting in-depth stories about why I picked a lot of the ones that I picked. And in the meantime, screw you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Yeah.